Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jon Hubbard, shareholder and consultant here at Boomer Consulting. And with me today is Sandra Wiley. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for being on this episode of the Boomer Briefing.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
Now, Sandra is our president and superstar consultant as well, leading our organization and leading firms around the country, the world, frankly, in all sorts of areas. And we have not only a local or national topic, but we have a global topic as well, Sandra, and you're pretty much in the center of it in terms of how you're helping firms navigate this. And that is outsourcing talent. Okay. Outsourcing talent, really big topic. And this topic isn't necessarily brand new. This whole kind of the history around outsourcing in our profession goes way back. So as we dive into this conversation, can you start with just defining maybe what outsourcing is and maybe what it isn't to help everyone kind of start this conversation with the same mindset?
Absolutely. So, it's really interesting to me that Boomer Consulting has been talking about outsourcing probably for 20 years. I mean, a long time ago, we started that conversation. And today it does look different than it did maybe 20 years ago. Today, what we're going to talk about in this podcast is going to be around how do we find the resources that we need in the talent area to bring into our firm to do either full jobs. So someone who's a manager, a reviewer, someone who is an auditor or a tax professional, full-time, but they're not going to be working. We're not going to write their payroll check for them. We're going to write a check to a company and get that resource, or part-time. So it can be full-time, or it can be what we call gig, right? Which is we just get them for a project or two, or just a part of the year. So, some people now are calling them resources. Some of them are calling them insourcing because we're bringing them into the firm. Some are calling them gig workers. So you can call it anything you want, but really what it is, it's outsourcing projects that we need to someone, a person, an individual that we can bring to our firm, or at least get them to work with our firm on very specific tasks. So that's what we're talking about here. And there's some great new resources out there that I think they've been there for a while, but we haven't really needed them up until now. So so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. And, I've heard you say in the past, it's not sending work out as it is finding people from the outside to do the work. And that's a little bit of a mindset shift.
Which is why I think some people are calling it insourcing.
Right.
Because they're not taking the work and sending it away necessarily. They're bringing people into their system and letting them work. I think that's where that word comes from. So.
Nope, that's great. And, you work closely with a lot of firms on helping them transform their business model. I mean, if you look at the typical business model of a firm today, pretty much every aspect and every component is positioned to evolve and transform over the next, couple years, 5 years, 10 years, couple decades here. So as you think about all of that and you think about this topic of outsourcing, okay, why is it important for firms to really start to embrace this concept?
I think there's two reasons primarily that people should start looking at this. The first is we have been in a talent war for years, trying to go out and use recruiters or use staff that we have to recruit people into our firm and keep them. Now that we have the Great Resignation going on and the fact that there are less people coming into the profession in accounting, we have an even bigger battle to fight to try to find the right people. So one reason is I think that we've got to find people in a different way. We've got to start looking in a different way. The second is if you were to take a chart of how a CPA firm's work runs, there are still to this day, there are still those ebbs and flows, right? There are certain times of the year or we have a lot of work, and there's other times of the year that we don't have as much work. And so hiring a full-time person for the entire year sometimes doesn't make any sense at all. It would be better all the way around if we could find people to plug in during the times of the year that it is busier. So finding resources that you don't have to hire full-time, that you can hire for potentially parts of the year, makes so much sense. We just haven't had those resources as readily available as we do now. So that's two big reasons why we should be looking at a different kind of model as we're growing our firms.
Yeah, those are two really good reasons, Sandra. I was just speaking with a firm this morning, and actually a group of firms this morning, and kind of what you're talking about are those seasons of compression throughout the year.
Yep.
And those seasons of compression hardly ever revolve around advisory and consulting work. It's always around the compliance work in the tax and audit space.
Good point.
And while there are outsourcing opportunities all across the board, there are uniquely outsourcing opportunities specifically in this compliance base. And so it's really interesting to kind of be talking with you about this and just kind of getting to hear, firms talking about various pain points that they're experiencing, but not necessarily connecting the dots to outsourcing as being a solution. And so that's why I think this episode and this conversation is going to be really relevant to so many people out there.
I could not agree with you more. I think that, you and I have talked many times, and if you've heard any of our podcasts before, you know about the triangle to the diamond look, right? And we know that to make that diamond work, we have to outsource or we have to automate some of that compliance work. This is the outsourcing that we're talking about. We're not talking about taking the work and sending it necessarily to India. We're talking about find people right here in the United States that want to do that compliance work, but you don't have to hire them, and they could work in a completely different place. And guess what? They can work for you. So then you get to that diamond much, much faster. So that's the business model we want.
Yes, absolutely. And let's dive into that, a little bit. You and I know, just because we're so plugged into this topic, that there has been an explosion of resources in this area over the last couple of years. And kind of to your point as well, kind of in the intro, some of these have been around for a while, but now they have a new light being shined on them, as well. And maybe they've updated some of their practices and some of their, techniques around this. So tell us about some of the solutions out there that firms have access to help them navigate this outsourcing situation.
So, you're absolutely right. There's some of them that are bubbling up that are newer that maybe we haven't heard of as much. And there's others that we go, oh my gosh, we've known about that resource for years, but now they've changed their business model a bit so that they're more attractive to this gig environment that we're looking at. So I'll just name a few. Obviously, a couple of them are out there that a lot of our firms are starting to look into is SAPRO, that's SAPRO. And they have resources that are coming from South Africa. And so we know that they have specific resources they plug into your firm directly. So you get the same people, they feel like they're team members. You know them, you have conversations with them. Another one that is similar is Makosi. It's MAKOSI. And they're similar to what SAPRO is doing. We have Integrity, which several of our firms have started using Integrity, and that's ENTEGRITY. And we have heard very good things about Integrity. A couple that I would say are a little bit different business model, but we have clients that have used them and love them, is Beach Valley. They're a great resource for outsourcing or bringing in some new resources to your firm. And Accounting Fly, which is another one. Now, Accounting Fly, many of you have probably heard about before. They tweaked their business model a bit to really tune into those gig and part-time kinds of resources. So that's worthy of looking at. And then of course, there's a couple that you've probably all heard about before, but we should not ignore, or we shouldn't discount: Expatax, as with Walters Kluwer, and then SurePrep, which are both very good resources. So those are just some. I mean, the truth is every day we're learning about new ones. But that also tells me that that is a resource that you should all be looking at. Because if that many resources are coming out and that many of our clients who are really great clients are starting to look at and use those resources, and they like the resources, we should all probably be looking in that area. So
absolutely. No, that's really good advice. And, you know, I was speaking with a firm leader the other day about this topic, and he said, well, I'm not quite sure our team really wants to outsource anything. And I said, well, yeah, we're laughing now. It's,
yeah.
well, have you asked your team? No. And I said, well, that's probably a really good opportunity. And he did a survey, just a real simple survey, and he got a lot of ideas back, right? And so I think part of this process, and Sandra, I want to see if you agree with this, part of this process of kind of figuring out the outsourcing game for your firm is being able to go down the path of figuring it out without having all the answers at the very beginning. And that includes asking your team, hey, if you could outsource a certain aspect or task related to your role, what would that be? And start to collect almost an inventory of opportunities. Do you see firms doing that? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I really like how you said that, an inventory of opportunities, because I will tell you that I think there's two things that I hear most when we start having this discussion. Is the first one is, our people are never going to want to do this. Well, it's not our people. When you ask the majority of the people in the firm that are actually doing the tasks, they'll tell you, oh yeah, we would definitely entertain the idea. It is the people that are at the top, the partner group, they're scared. They've never done it before. They don't understand it, and they're worried. And some of their worry is, how are the clients going to accept this? And here's what we know to be true, that the clients that have done this and done it with a wide swath of clients that they've worked with, there are few, very few of the clients that push back. What the clients want to know is my work being done well? And are you going to sign off on it and tell me it's okay? The relationship is still with the firm and with the partner and with the managers that are doing the work. They don't necessarily care who prepares it and gets it all ready for them. What they care about is, at the end of the day, it's done well. So the fear that we have is simply that. It's just our own fear. It's not the client. It's not our other team members. It's us. And so if we can get out of our own way, we'll probably be just fine.
Yep. And I was, in that conversation I mentioned this morning that, I was having, that's exactly what I shared with them too, was, hey, the biggest stumbling block we have around this topic is not coming from our clients. It's coming from our perception internally of like what this means and what this represents for our firm and what we think our clients care about. So that's really interesting that you say that. So as you've seen firms do this successfully, and again, we don't have so much time where we can kind of get into all the examples, but as you've seen firms do this successfully, what are some of the benefits they're starting to receive because of it?
Well, obviously the first benefit is that we are able to take some of the load off of our current team members and give them a little room to breathe. This COVID thing has really, really shined a light on mental health and wellness, and people are burned out. They need a break and they need to have some relief. And this is one way to get it. So that I would always shine the light on. One of the things you're going to get back from it is some relief for your current people. I think secondarily, you're going to find out that some of the work you're doing is okay to have somebody else doing it, so that your people that are there can raise up. I love the upskilling of employees. The reason a lot of them have not been able to upskill faster is because they have to do the work that's there. They're stuck. They are so busy doing what they're doing they can't even look at the next level up to even try to do it because they are so underwater. So this gives them relief so that then they can upskill. And now you have a firm of people that are your people that work for you, that are now not working at that low level. They're working at a much higher level, which means your clients get better service. They can learn how to consult and advise. And all of a sudden your firm is a whole lot better firm all the way around, because you use a different kind of talent that's out there and that's readily available for you.
There's so much positive ripple effect that happens.
Yeah.
And, a lot of this is even hard to predict, right? If we put ourselves in the partner shoes and maybe we start to make this happen in our firm, there's always surprise benefits that pop up as well that you can't even,
Yep.
plan for. So those few you just listed out are huge.
Yep.
So as we conclude this conversation, Sandra, what's your recommendation to firms? Maybe someone's intrigued right now. They're listening to the podcast. Maybe they're in their car and they're thinking, well, we tried this maybe 10 years ago, or we have never really been that warmed up to the idea of doing something like this, but I've been hearing about this a lot more. Maybe we should look into it. What's your recommendations on next steps?
If I were running a CPA firm and I was trying to get my arms around this, the first thing I would do is put together a cross-functional group of people, maybe an auditor, a tax professional, maybe a consultant, a partner, a manager, a staff member, and I would have them start looking for, I'd go to the resources that I just gave you, right? Go out and research them and see how they work and see which one sounds and feels the most comfortable for you and your business model. And then call some references, ask them for who are some other CPA firms that you have worked with and who could we talk to. Call them. If you are a part of one of our circles, or if you're a part of a group, ask people that you know. There are lots of firms out there that are using this outsourced strategy now. So find some references. That's a good way to start. You've got to do the work yourself to really identify whether it's going to work or not, right? And then try it. Be ready to go for next year. Be ready to go for 2022, because that is really, just, I hate to be like a commercial here, but just do it. That's where you're going to prove it to yourself. Now, understand that not every single time that you do it, it's going to be perfect, but you got to start somewhere. If you never start, you'll never see the benefit of it. So just get started.
I think that's such powerful advice, because our typical approach to consulting and to coaching and to kind of talking about things like this is not to play fear factor with anyone or try and scare anyone. But if you think about it, Sandra, kind of the point you just made about, hey, the first one or two times you try this, it's not going to be perfect, but it's more about the learning that happens and how you evolve that. Well, if you're a firm listening today and you haven't done anything in this space, you're a couple of years behind those individuals,
That's
those
right.
firms that have started it. And this is going to be a significant strategy, to use the word you used earlier, Sandra, strategy for talent and for your firm. And that's really significant. So,
Absolutely.
Sandra, as always, it's such a pleasure speaking with you on these topics. So thank you for being on this episode of the Boomer Briefing.
Thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure. And I hope the entire audience takes just a little bit away and try something that's just a little outside their comfort zone for next year.
That's good advice. So for those listening, if you enjoy these topics, we ask you please subscribe. That really helps us out. And we release new episodes every Tuesday morning. So we always switch up the topics, but the topics are always relevant to your firm and organization and helping you succeed and grow. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thanks all.